What if the laws of nature weren't laws at all, but agreements, occasionally broken by reality itself? High in the Himalayas, near a desolate stretch of the Kargil Highway, a military truck idled at a slope that bent the horizon. An engineer stepped out, expecting the vehicle to roll back. Instead, it crept upward. No engine, no push, just a steady, unnatural ascent, like gravity itself had reversed course. That was 1995. Since then, this so-called magnetic hill of Ladakh has become a classified riddle. The anomaly defies gravity, not in theory, but in fact. Cars, rocks, and even military machinery accelerate uphill with no apparent force. Aircraft passing overhead at low altitudes encounter an upward drag so strong it alters flight paths. Gravity, it seems, is no longer a constant. Scientists have tried to make sense of it. Dr. Rajesh Kumar, a physicist from the Indian Institute of Technology, brought precision instruments and equations rooted in Newton's laws. But the data betrayed him. Gravity pointed upward, not toward Earth's center. The field's strength shifted across the 30-kilometer stretch like a river with no banks. There's no magnetic ore beneath the soil. The granite is ordinary. And yet the effect is consistent. Day and night, rain or shine, indifferent to celestial alignment. A gravitational reversal mapped to perfection, with boundaries sharp enough to be measured within meters. Local legend calls it a path to the afterlife. Spirits drawn skyward, but what science can't explain, folklore quietly frames. Maybe they're both glimpsing the same truth from different vantage points. As the years pass and military studies remain sealed, one uncomfortable realization lingers. Here, on this stretch of road, one of the universe's most fundamental forces simply runs backward. What happens when the constants that built our world no longer hold? Are these failures of measurement, or signs that nature is capable of rewriting its own script? It started with a watch that ran too slow, just a few seconds off, then minutes. But the deeper they went into the Minnesota forest, the more time unraveled. Hidden among dense trees and soft moss lies a stretch of land with no name, known only in government files as Temporal Anomaly Zone 7. Just 200 square meters in size, it's unremarkable to the eye. But step inside and time itself begins to hesitate. Researchers first noticed the anomaly in 2003, when GPS systems began to report timing errors over the same patch of forest. At first, it was dismissed as a software glitch. But when atomic clocks, devices designed to lose no more than a second in a million years, started slipping out of sync within minutes, it became clear this wasn't a malfunction. It was something far stranger. Dr. Sarah Chen from the National Institute of Standards and Technology led the investigation. What she found was staggering. Atomic time slowed within the zone, not just metaphorically. Cesium clocks ticked slower, not due to gravity, velocity, or any known relativistic cause. Yet the readings matched the math of Einstein's equations, as if the space itself was warped by an invisible hand. Trees grew faster inside the anomaly. Growth rings mismatched the seasons. Carbon dating came back older than expected. Time, for whatever reason, had loosened its grip here. Most eerie were the biological effects. Researchers who spent time in the zone reported changes they couldn't fully explain, shifts in metabolism, altered sleep cycles, a soft hum in their nerves, as though their bodies had adapted to a slower tempo of reality. The boundaries are precise. Walk in, and watches lose sync. Step out, and everything resumes as if nothing happened. The transition occurs in less than a meter, a clean slice through time. The government keeps the site closed, not because it's dangerous in the traditional sense, but because its implications are. How do we trust memory, aging, or even history itself when time may not be flowing the same everywhere? And if time can drift in a forest in Minnesota, where else might it be unraveling, unnoticed? Imagine a place where your voice vanishes into the air, no echo, no static, just silence, so complete It feels like the world itself stops listening. In the remote Australian outback, 800 kilometers northeast of Perth, there lies a region locals won't speak of. Scientists call it the null-bore void, a 50-kilometer-wide dead zone where electromagnetic waves disappear. Radios fall silent. Satellites see only a black shadow. Electronic equipment simply stops. The anomaly was discovered in 1987 when satellite transmissions failed to reach a portion of the continent. At first, it was blamed on interference. But the truth was more unsettling. The zone didn't block signals. It devoured them. Dr. Michael Thornton of the Australian National University led a series of field tests. He brought in transmitters, sensors, and communications arrays. None worked past the boundary. No signals entered. None escaped. Not radio, not microwave, not even gamma rays. Maxwell's equations, the bedrock of electromagnetism, offered no explanation. The laws simply didn't apply. And yet you can see inside. Sunlight filters through the trees. Shadows fall normally. But try to photograph it or call for help, and your tools betray you. Even analog devices, flashlights, batteries, tape recorders, cease to function. The zone isn't blocking frequencies. It nullifies the very presence of electromagnetic energy. Geologically, the ground is unremarkable. Limestone, dry brush, and windswept stone. Nothing conductive. No natural ore that might absorb radiation. Still, the silence holds. Most disconcerting is how sharp the border is. The transition happens over centimeters. One step and your GPS dies. Another, and you're back online. It's as though a curtain has been drawn over a piece of the world, one that sound, signal, and energy cannot cross. The Australian military has since claimed the land, removed it from maps, and declared it a restricted zone. No official explanation has ever been released. What kind of physics allows a space to selectively erase one of the four fundamental forces? And if energy can be silenced, what might happen to thought, to memory, to the signals within our own bodies? What if a compass could lie, not because of interference, but because the rules that govern magnetism no longer apply? Beneath a research facility outside Geneva, Switzerland, there is a basement room known only to a select few. Officially, it's called Experimental Chamber 7, but among those who have worked there, it's whispered about as the Reverse Magnetism Lab, a space where magnetic fields bend inward, breaking the invisible order that guides every compass on Earth. The anomaly was discovered in 2008 during superconducting tests meant to improve magnetic levitation systems. As coils were activated, compass needles began to twist, not toward the north, but toward the center of the room. Every instrument, every metallic object responded as if the laws of magnetic field lines had been rewritten. North no longer pushed outward. It pulled. Dr. Elena Vasquez from CERN led the quiet investigation. What she found overturned a century of magnetic theory. Normally, magnetic field lines loop from north to south, but inside Chamber 7, they converged into a singular point, an end without a beginning. It was as though the magnetic field had collapsed inward into a well of force with no source. There were no magnets in the room. No coils were energized, yet the field persisted, unpowered, unexplained, strong enough to wrench metal tools from hands and send them flying toward the invisible center. And it wasn't static. The field shifted subtly in response to movement, orientation, even observation, as if aware of being watched. Attempts to map it failed. Magnetometers distorted. Readings contradicted themselves. Scientists began to suspect that the anomaly wasn't just defying magnetic law. It was interacting with the act of measurement. Eventually, the chamber was sealed. Access was restricted. Files deleted. What remains is an empty room that still pulls, still points, still waits beneath the concrete. Magnetism is one of the most predictable forces we know. It builds our motors, guides our migrations, holds the universe together at atomic scales. But what if it can also unravel? And in that unraveling, what does it say about the forces we trust to be constant, unseen, and true? It began underground, in the hollow dark of a decommissioned mine shaft near Sudbury, Ontario, where weight became a question and mass lost its meaning. At 200 meters below the surface, a team of geotechnical engineers noticed something strange. Equipment weighed less near the floor of a cavern and more near the ceiling. A 500-kilogram drilling rig lost nearly half its weight when lowered, then doubled in mass as it was hoisted back up. No tricks of leverage, no magnetism, just a silent, steady defiance of everything we understand about density and gravity. Dr. Amanda Price from the University of Toronto arrived with skepticism and scales. What she found shattered both. Objects changed weight based on vertical position, not from gravitational pull, but from actual changes in mass. Water near the floor became unusually light, flowing like oil. The same water near the ceiling thickened beyond the density of ice. Lead, stone, plastic, every material followed the same pattern. Near the floor, they lightened. Near the ceiling, they grew heavier. It wasn't an illusion of force. It was a transformation of the matter itself. The chamber operates within sharply defined boundaries. Walk in, and your tools grow lighter. Climb a ladder, and they tug harder at your arms. Move too fast, and balance becomes treacherous. A simple bucket of water could tip over as its contents shift mass within seconds. Carbon dating revealed another oddity. A single piece of ancient wood tested at different vertical points returned different ages, centuries apart, as if time and decay had been bent by the same force. No known field, magnetic or gravitational, can explain the effect. The surrounding rock is inert. There's no heat differential, no energy input. Just a space where density, the very identity of matter, refuses to obey. The site has since been sealed, declared a national security interest. Its walls now echo with nothing but air and unanswered questions. What is mass, if it can vary without cause? What does it mean for reality, if the building blocks of the physical world can become heavier or lighter without gaining or losing anything at all? And if matter can change depending on where it stands, what does that say about us? In the Nevada desert west of Las Vegas, the wind whispers across scorched sand. There's nothing to see, just an empty stretch of land behind chain-link fences. But within this desolate space lies a phenomenon so unsettling it challenges the very sequence of reality. Here, effects precede their causes. The anomaly was first noticed in 1994 during weapons testing. Surveillance footage showed explosions before the triggers were activated. Impact waves rippled across the ground moments before detonation switches were engaged. The data, reviewed frame by frame, was clear. Events were occurring out of order. Dr. Jonathan Hayes of Los Alamos National Laboratory led the investigation. Instruments were calibrated, then recalibrated. Timestamps confirmed what cameras had recorded. Reality was flowing backward, but only in a confined area, 47 meters wide and 12 meters high. Within that invisible box, physics broke its own promise. Drop a glass, and you'll hear it shatter before it hits the ground. Turn on a light, and the room will brighten just before your finger touches the switch. Cause and effect are reversed, not metaphorically, but measurably. Even human behavior changes. Test subjects report an eerie sense of inevitability, actions taken because their outcomes had already happened. One soldier claimed to pick up a tool moments after seeing it in his hand. There was no decision, only the echo of what had already occurred. The implications are terrifying. Inside the zone, free will seems to erode. Decisions become shadows of predetermined outcomes. And outside, observers watch reality unfold like a film being rewound in real time. The military, predictably, found uses for this. Early warning systems that react before threats emerge. Sensors that detect movements before they happen. Technology that sees the future, but only by sacrificing the natural flow of time. No one knows what generates the effect. No cosmic strings. No visible structures. Just a place where the arrow of time bends back on itself like a river looping upstream. If causality can break, if the future can pull the present into its orbit, what becomes of accountability, of choice? And if time can run backward in the desert, how long before it decides to do so everywhere else? Beneath the Swiss Alps, in a chamber carved into stone and science, a fundamental truth unraveled. Light does not always obey its limit. The room was part of a larger research facility, known only in internal memos as Project Spectrum. Within it, laser interferometry experiments revealed a glitch, not in the data, but in nature itself. Red and blue light, traveling the same distance, took different amounts of time. Not by fractions of nanoseconds, but enough to be measured with atomic precision. Dr. Hans Müller of CERN confirmed it. Light speed, supposedly the universal constant, was variable inside this chamber. Red light moved 12% faster than Einstein's theoretical ceiling. Blue light lagged, crawling 8% slower than expected. And most curiously, the speed changed with direction. North to south was swifter than east to west. The room somehow had a preference, an axis where reality bent just slightly. These findings weren't flukes. Repeated trials confirmed them. Photons arrived before they were sent. Detectors triggered ahead of emission. Time was folding in subtle but measurable ways. Attempts to capture the event failed. Recording devices malfunctioned inside the space, offering distorted images and scrambled data. Instruments became part of the paradox they tried to measure, entrained in a reality where information could travel faster than causality allowed. And it wasn't just visible light. The entire electromagnetic spectrum, microwaves, X-rays, radio waves, shifted speed and behavior depending on their wavelength and the chamber's orientation. It was as if the very scaffolding of space-time had twisted, creating a loophole through Einstein's barrier. Governments acted quickly. The chamber was sealed. Access restricted. What had been an academic curiosity was now a global security concern. After all, if light can exceed its limit, so can information. And if information can do that, time itself becomes negotiable. This isn't just about light. It's about the boundary between past and future, signal and silence. What if the speed of light, the bedrock of causality, relativity, and the cosmic order, isn't a law, but a condition? And what happens if that condition begins to change? In a sealed room somewhere in northern Canada, a mystery unfolds at the smallest scale imaginable, one that doesn't unravel, but refuses to collapse. The chamber was built for a gravitational wave detection. Its isolation was absolute. No sound, no heat, no vibration. But in 2015, researchers noticed something unexpected. Quantum systems inside the space stopped behaving normally. Superposition, the ghostly principle where particles exist in multiple states at once, didn't collapse. It persisted. Dr. Jennifer Walsh from the Institute for Quantum Computing confirmed it. Electrons, atoms, even larger systems, remained in dual states indefinitely. Where quantum mechanics predicts collapse within nanoseconds due to environmental interference, here coherence lasted hours, days. Macroscopic objects, billions of particles, could exist in multiple configurations at once. Crystals refracted light in two directions simultaneously. Vibrating molecules pulsed with rhythms out of sync with reality. No observer, no interaction, no entropy forced them to choose a state. And the strangest part, the chamber was silent to the rest of the universe. Entangled particles brought into the void lost their link with outside partners. The space severed quantum entanglement, isolating everything within from the universal wave function that binds reality together. The zone was not just quiet, it was disconnected. Inside, consciousness itself behaved oddly. Test subjects reported heightened awareness, split perceptions, and a lingering sense of being more than one version of themselves. Neural proteins maintained coherence, suggesting that quantum effects in the brain, usually suppressed by noise, could operate freely here. The boundaries are razor-thin. One atom over the line, and decoherence resumes. Time, space, and measurement reassert themselves. Outside the chamber, physicists debate what it means. Inside, nature holds its breath. Quantum mechanics has always been haunted by paradox, by Schrödinger's cat, alive and dead. Here, the cat remains both, not for a moment, but for as long as the observer waits. What if the randomness of reality, the collapse, the choice, the outcome, isn't inevitable? And what could it mean for memory, identity, and mind if the self can exist in superposition too? Beneath the parched crust of the Atacama Desert in Chile, where the sun scorches without mercy and the air is bone dry, scientists found a room that grows colder and hotter at once, where disorder shrinks and energy flows in reverse. It's called the thermodynamics reversal zone. The discovery came by accident. Researchers measuring closed-system energy transfers noticed a pattern that should have been impossible. Heat moved from colder objects to warmer ones. Isolated systems became more organized over time, not less. Entropy, the one-way tide that turns stars to ash and life to dust, was flowing backward. Dr. Carlos Rodriguez led the investigation, expecting error. Instead, he found a truth so precise, so repeatable, that it could only be real. In this sealed room, molecules organize themselves, Brownian motion reverses, dust gathers into order. Heat engines run above 100% efficiency, pulling energy from nowhere but the ambient air, violating the second law of thermodynamics. No tricks, no hidden batteries, just a space where the arrow of time has bent the wrong way. Biological tests proved even stranger. Cells within the zone aged slower, divided more efficiently, and showed signs of optimized metabolism. DNA errors corrected themselves. Mitochondria, those tiny engines of life, burned cleaner and longer. The effect is localized, bounded with eerie sharpness. A thermometer held half inside the zone shows a split reading. A glass of water placed on the floor forms a thermal gradient with no heat source. Objects left alone reassemble into lower entropy configurations, order rising from randomness without intervention. And all of it happens without sound, light, or fanfare. Just a quiet defiance of everything science has taught us about how energy depletes and how time marches forward. The site was sealed soon after, classified in cooperation with international agencies. It remains a puzzle locked beneath the sand, too dangerous to expose, too profound to ignore. Entropy defines the direction of time. It tells us why the past is fixed and the future unwritten. But what if that's not a law, but a habit of the universe, one it can break when no one's looking? And if time can reverse in the heat between two stones, what does that say about our beginning or our end? There's a place that cannot be found on any map, not because it's hidden, but because maps can't hold it still. Somewhere on Earth, at coordinates erased from every database and satellite archive, lies anomalous zone alpha, a shifting field where the very constants of reality fall into flux. Here, the rules that shape atoms, light, and gravity rewrite themselves moment by moment. It was first detected in 2007 when GPS satellites began to falter over a wide expanse of terrain. Not from interference or signal loss, but because the satellites themselves were confused. The mathematical grid of Earth's surface no longer fit. Gravitational pull varied wildly. Particle masses shifted from one hour to the next. The speed of light, a number hard-coded into physics itself, changed by up to 15%. Dr. Elena Kowalski led the multinational team tasked with observation. They quickly realized this wasn't a weather anomaly or geological oddity. This was something deeper. The scaffolding of reality itself was unstable. The fine structure constant which governs electromagnetic force fluctuated in ways that should have unraveled matter itself. And yet, structures held only to shimmer and distort before stabilizing again under new parameters. The effects are far from theoretical. Inside the zone, electronics fail catastrophically. Microprocessors can't adapt to physics that shift faster than their logic circuits can compute. Chemical reactions slow down. Some speed up. Objects fall at inconsistent rates. Even sound and light twist through the air like reflections on water. And the mind? It suffers most. Observers report altered perception. Colors bleed beyond the visible spectrum. Shapes lose dimensional consistency. Thoughts stutter. Memory fractures. Some researchers had to be pulled from the zone after experiencing cascading hallucinations tied not to emotion, but to shifting physical inputs their brains could no longer interpret. Worse still, the field moves. Sometimes it's 10 kilometers wide. Other times, just a few hundred meters. It breathes, expanding and contracting, folding itself in and out of space like a tide made of uncertainty. Now, a permanent outpost monitors from a safe distance. No one knows how or why it began, or if it's growing. What if our physical laws, those sacred constants etched into the equations of the universe, aren't universal at all? And what would happen if such instability weren't confined to one place, but became a whisper spreading outward, one variable at a time? In a forgotten corridor of a secure facility, buried not beneath earth, but beneath layers of silence, lies a doorway to a deeper paradox. The separation between observation and collapse, undone. Quantum mechanics has always walked a tightrope between the real and the theoretical. The equations work, the experiments confirm them, but their implications have always bordered on the absurd. And nowhere is that absurdity more starkly real than in the quantum decoherence void. This chamber wasn't built to break physics. It was designed to shield delicate equipment from environmental noise. But in 2015, during gravitational wave research, scientists noticed something impossible. Quantum superpositions weren't collapsing. Not in milliseconds. Not even in minutes. They were persisting for hours. Dr. Jennifer Walsh found particles, entangled, undecided, unresolved, maintaining their ghostly multiplicity far beyond the theoretical limit. Inside the chamber, interference patterns didn't fade. They thrived, even when scaled up to macroscopic systems. A single crystal, billions of atoms wide, simultaneously vibrated in multiple states. Lasers aimed into the room split and returned in patterns that defied classical expectation. At the quantum level, the world remained a question, not an answer. Then came the biological tests. Proteins maintained superpositions. Neural microtubules, those tiny structures in brain cells, showed evidence of sustained quantum states. Consciousness itself, long assumed to be classical and deterministic, shimmered with possibility. Inside this chamber, the brain may not choose what to think. It may hover, undecided, until a thought is observed. Most unnerving, the chamber disconnected from the universe. Entangled pairs brought in from outside broke their bonds. The space acted as a vacuum, not of matter, but of wave function. Nothing linked to anything else. No probabilities leaked in or out. Step one atom outside the door, and decoherence returns instantly. Reality snaps back. The quantum haze collapses. But inside, everything waits. The chamber is now sealed, buried beneath red tape and secrecy. It remains a space where the deepest equations of the universe unfold in their purest form, and where observation itself becomes a disturbance, not a tool. What is reality, if the world does not choose a state until we look? And what are we if our own minds might hover, or unresolved, between selves, moments, and meanings? On a winding mountain road, on a silent forest floor, in the void beneath your feet, anomalies can hide in plain sight. But some, like the one beneath Chile's Atacama Desert, hide not through subtlety but through inversion. Entropy, the law that defines the universe's march toward disorder, the one rule that never breaks, until it did. In a sealed research complex, scientists ran thermal simulations, routine tests to measure energy efficiency. What they found instead was a closed system growing more ordered. Heat moved from cold bodies to warm ones. Entropy, the great equalizer, flowed in reverse. Dr. Carlos Rodriguez didn't believe it at first. No physicist would. But every measurement confirmed the violation. Systems that should decay instead became more precise. Engines that should lose energy instead gained it, producing more work than thermodynamics should allow. The effect wasn't chaos. It was refinement. At the molecular level, particles aligned. Random motion reversed. Crystalline structures formed spontaneously. Heat engines exceeded 100% efficiency, as if powered by some unseen spring of negative entropy. The impossible became routine. And then the biologists arrived. Within this zone, living cells demonstrated perfect organization. DNA replication errors vanished. Mitochondria operated with unheard-of precision. Cellular aging reversed, not stopped, but rewound. Plants grew faster and healthier. Mice lived longer. The air itself seemed tuned to preservation. The boundaries of the anomaly are sharp. You can hold a thermometer across the threshold and measure both rising and falling temperatures in the same hand. Thermal gradients exist without input, violating conservation laws that underpin modern physics. The site is now sealed, its doors hidden behind layers of stone and silence. Governments fear what it suggests, because if disorder is not inevitable, then time is not a straight line. If the second law can reverse, then the future is not guaranteed, and the past may not be as far away as we think. What if the universe remembers its beginning? And what if, in certain quiet corners, it is trying to return? In the high reaches of the Himalayas, in a chamber beneath the Swiss Alps, deep in the Nevada desert, each anomaly has bent one law of nature. But in one place, they all break at once. Anomalous Zone Alpha is unlike the others. It doesn't reverse gravity, or twist time, or swallow electromagnetism. It does all of them, and more. It was discovered not by chance, but by contradiction. In 2007, satellites tracking atmospheric pressure over a remote region recorded data that didn't match any model. GPS readings warped, light refracted at the wrong angles. Accelerometers pulsed as if dragged by invisible tides. When researchers arrived, nothing looked wrong, but their instruments told a different story. Dr. Elena Kowalski, already known for her work on fluctuating physical constants, led the analysis. Her team found that in this 10-kilometer zone, reality was unstable. The gravitational constant, the force that binds planets to stars, wavered between 8 and 12 meters per second squared. The speed of light shifted by up to 15%. Even the fine structure constant, which governs how electrons orbit atoms, flickered unpredictably. Chemical reactions stalled. Digital devices failed. Colors changed hue. Sounds warped. And for those who stepped inside, perception itself unraveled. Time stretched and collapsed. Dimensions folded and unfurled. One scientist reported hearing color and seeing temperature. The worst part? It's growing. Sometimes. The zone pulses like a living thing. It expands, contracts. Its boundaries roll like a tide, devouring familiar laws as they pass. Satellites lose sync, clocks spin, radios hiss. To stand within it is to feel the floor of reality soften beneath your feet. The constants that hold the universe together, speed, mass, charge, force, become suggestions. Optional, mutable. International organizations monitor it from afar. Drones vanish. Data corrupts. No one enters now. Only sensors watch until they too are silenced. What do you call a place where physics itself is in flux, where the universe forgets how to be itself? And if our laws can fray here, in one forgotten zone, what keeps them from unraveling everywhere? Across deserts, forests, mountains, and laboratories hidden beneath the earth, a quiet truth echoes louder than any revelation. The laws of physics are not unbreakable. We've journeyed through 10 anomalies, each a tear in the fabric of what we call reality, a hill where gravity flows upward, a forest where time slows, a void where electromagnetism disappears, a room where particles refuse to choose a state, a desert where entropy forgets which direction to run. Individually, they challenge our understanding. Collectively, they hint at something deeper, that the constants we rely on, gravity, light, time, mass, might not be constants at all. Perhaps they are agreements held in place by a larger structure, one that occasionally falters or flexes. These places haven't just bent the rules. They've removed them. Within each zone lies a question that science cannot answer, not because the data isn't there, but because the framework we use to understand it was never built to handle exceptions this extreme. And so, these anomalies are hidden, classified, forgotten by design. They are not feared for what they are, but for what they imply, because if physics can fail in one place, it can fail anywhere. What does it mean for consciousness if causality can reverse? For identity if quantum states persist? For the universe if its laws are local, not global? Perhaps these are not flaws in the system, but glimpses of its fuller truth. Moments where reality opens a door and lets us peek at the machinery behind the curtain. Not errors, but invitations. To think deeper, to wonder harder, to accept that our knowledge is provisional, that the universe is not bound by our understanding, but endlessly larger than it. In these 10 secret places, we do not find answers. We find humility. And maybe that is what these anomalies are truly about. Not the breaking of physics, but the reminder that the unknown is not an enemy to be conquered, but a mystery to be respected. Somewhere out there, the world is not behaving as it should. And maybe, just maybe, that means we have more to discover than we ever imagined.